Hello, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Willander, and I'm with the United States Air Force. I've been in the Air Force for 30 years, and at some point in the very near future, I'm going to have to transition out of the military into the corporate sector. So I'm here today to have a conversation with Dan Riley, a retired Coast Guard captain, 06, whose last duty station was in the 1st Coast Guard District in Boston, Massachusetts. So we're going to have a conversation about the skills that he has learned about helping veterans transition, or military people transition, into the corporate and the private sector. So good morning, Dan. How are you?
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me here.
All right, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And we're going to have some great information that I think will really help military people and veterans transitioning out of the service into the corporate and the private sector. So let's get started. So my first question is, how did you get involved in assisting military veterans in their career transition?
Well, Chris, about 20 years ago, when I was transitioning from my 26-year career in the Coast Guard, I had the good fortune to meet a gentleman named Anton Fritz. Anton had been a prior service Marine, and he had a career in the high-tech industry in the Boston area, and he had decided to start volunteering at the AFRC at Hanscom Air Force Base, helping those of us who were transitioning out of the military. And he taught us a process of how to come to understand the hidden job market, how to understand your skills and document your skills so that you could be more successful working with prospective employers.
Outstanding. And so what experience do you have that you think is particularly relevant for veterans and military people transitioning?
Well, unfortunately, Anton passed on a couple of years later, and I decided that this would be a pay it forward on my part to Anton, that I would take over the work that he was doing. And thanks to him, I was able to land a great job with the largest privately held temp and staffing company in the world at the time. They were doing about $1 billion in sales, and I went to work for them teaching their sales staff, and then got promoted to the HR manager position. I then had the good fortune to get headhunted away from them to a company called Achieve Global, where I worked for another 14 years in corporate training, designing, delivering, and developing training for Fortune 500 companies in sales, customer service, and leadership.
Well, that sounds like some great experience. I think you bring a lot to bear for the veterans that are going to transition out into the corporate world. What do you think is the most important thing military and veterans need to prepare as they begin to transition out?
They need to know their product. It's the same thing I experienced working with Fortune 500 companies with their sales training staff. You need to know how your product benefits the prospective employer. And when you're in career transition, you're the product. You've got to know all your skills, knowledge, and abilities, and you've got to be able to articulate that to the prospective employer so they understand how you can help them. And from their perspective, helping them means helping them to make money, because they're in business to stay in business.
Absolutely. So what do you think is the best approach for them to identify their accomplishments over their career?
Well, I found that the technique that Anton taught me was start with the memory map. The memory map actually comes from Richard Bowles' book, What Color is Your Parachute? And the memory map is an aid that helps you look back at all of your activities in your past and all the accomplishments that you had during your activities, so you can start to determine the skills that you have, where they came from, and how they would benefit a prospective employer.
Excellent. And how does one go about beginning to prepare this memory map?
Well, the first thing you want to do is take a look at the map itself, look at the categories. It's divided into 5-year segments so that you can take a look at 5 years at a time of your past experience, which usually works well for everyone to look back that far, consider all of the activities that they did during those times, and to get a sense of them. The best way to go about that, to prepare, is to dig out your performance evaluations, any citations, unit or personal award citations that you received, and get a good handle on where you've been and what you've done and what activities you're involved in during your career.
And what do the 3 columns mean within the memory map?
Well, first of all, the labor column is all your labor, and that's usually where everybody starts. It's all your assignments. But it's not just your primary assignments. A lot of times we have collateral duties that we have to do during our careers, and knowing those collateral duties and capturing that activity is important too as you go back through. The learning column is all of your learning. I found that people have no problem recalling a college course or a vocational course that they took, but they completely forget a lot of the technical training they got during their military career. As we all know, you go to a 5-day school. 5-day school is 40 hours of seat time, highly technical, usually focused directly on your job experience. We remember taking Accounting 101, but last time I checked, that was about 40 hours of seat time, and not as focused as the kind of training that we get in our military career. So it's important to capture all of that. Then the last column is leisure, and leisure is everything else. It's the volunteer work, it's the hobbies that you got involved in, wherever that volunteer work came from, whatever the initial motivation was, whether it was coaching youth sports, whether it was working on a political campaign, whether it's working in your church. All of that activity, you're using your most precious time. So it's important to keep track of that as well.
So the significance of the leisure column is really important then.
It really is, because nobody has too much leisure time. So you're spending your most precious resource. And no matter what motivated you to get into it in the beginning, the fact that you've done it and you've gotten accomplishments from it, you really need to take credit for that. You really need to think about that, because a lot of times that's where you're voting with your passion. It's the stuff that you're passionate about, and a lot of times it's where you're able to use your best skills. And I found both for military members and military spouses who I've worked with for years with the Military Spouse Foundation, they just completely ignore that because they weren't pulling a paycheck for it. And yet it's some of their best work often, and some of the accomplishments that they feel proudest of.
Outstanding. So once you've identified all of your activities within the 3 columns of the memory map, how do you turn those into accomplishments?
Well, some of the accomplishment information may already exist. It's in those evals that I talked about before that you want to pull out, and documents it well, and usually with very nice prose. But I found that the most important thing is to think about what you considered an accomplishment. Oftentimes we work with someone in a difficult situation, we've developed someone on a team, or we worked with a great team and consider that an accomplishment. We may not have gotten a medal or an award for it, but in our minds it was us doing our best work at a time with maybe the best team that we ever worked with, and we learned from others, or we helped others in a way that we really need to document and think about and consider that an accomplishment too.
Okay, so once you've identified these accomplishments, what are we going to do with them next?
We're going to turn those into PAR stories, which are accomplishment stories. And
And I'm sorry, what does PAR mean?
Sure. PAR is an acronym. There are 3 parts of a PAR. The first, the P stands for a problem or situation that you encountered when you came to that unit or to that command. The A is for action. What action did you take? And it's action that you took individually or as a member of a team often. And then R is for results. What were the results? And you want to be able to quantify those results in any way that you can. How much did you improve performance? How much did you eliminate? What percentage of errors were eliminated? How did you contribute to improving cycle time? Anything like that that's a measure that can clearly be understood by the person that's going to read this story. If you can't give it a specific measure of the result, at least tell the person who's going to read this later how big, how many people were on your team, how many pieces of equipment did you maintain, what was the value of the equipment that you were maintaining, what were some of the issues, the challenges that were related to that.
So problem, action, result is the PAR statement. Now, once we have those identified and written down, what should the individual do with those?
What you're now going to try to do, now that you've identified your accomplishments and you've identified your skills, you want to start thinking about redefining yourself as someone with a set of proven transferable skills, and no longer think about, I know the challenge, no longer think about yourself as a position description. The biggest challenge that we all have transitioning out of the military is trying to figure out, what am I going to do next? and we think about what our title was, what our military occupational specialty was, but we don't think about our skill set. And the employer needs to hear about your skills, and they need to hear about how you've had success with those skills so that you can help their organization.
Right, so I can, from my perspective, in my 30-year career, I know that we have a lot of acronyms in the military that probably don't directly translate into, the public or the corporate sector. And like you said, I think it's important to identify the skills that you've used to solve problems and achieve objectives that you can then correlate and relate into that public sector.
Exactly.
And so once we identify these, what types of skills should each individual emphasize for themselves?
Well, you've got to do a little bit of research at this point. Now that you've started to think about yourself as a set of skills, you want to go out and look at position descriptions. You want to do some networking and talk to people that are in the field that may be of interest to you. And when you're looking at position descriptions or classified ads, you want to look for the action verbs. What are they looking for? What skills are they looking for? And do you have those skills? And you'll find in your PAR statements that often that PAR story can be broken into multiple statements about how you use maybe planning skills, project management skills, financial management skills, logistics skills. You want to pull out those things and start to see how you've got statements to back up your accomplishments that fit what those position descriptions are looking for. And then that also helps you in networking to have a much more robust discussion with people that are able to maybe help you find where you fit within their organizations, and ask the kind of questions that lead to who in your organization needs these kind of skills.
And so what do individuals get by completing this memory map? What is the result?
Well, the biggest thing that comes first is just the self-confidence, because you go from that position of what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Where do the skills that I have fit? I worked with a Marine colonel one time, and his first answer was, well, I'm just a trained killer, and unless the mafia is looking for hitmen, I don't know where I'm going to be. And the truth was this colonel had tremendous background, tremendous experience, tremendous leadership, and started to look at himself in that totally different way. And I know he knew that deep down inside, but he had to bring it out and think through the accomplishments he had and all the skills that he was using and how those would fit in corporate America. But you've got to make the translation to the companies. You've got to be able to connect the dots so they can see the abilities that you have and how they've led to success in your career.
And so how does this inventory of transferable skills help them in their job search?
Well, first of all, you want to avoid the problem that so many people have when they start out. They do the ready, fire, aim thing. They start putting the message out that they're looking for a job. The message winds up sounding kind of needy. I'm looking for a job, anything will do. Or some just move in a direction of doing what's comfortable. They may stay with a government-related job. That's not to say those aren't great opportunities for some people. They may stay in something in the defense industry. That can be a great opportunity as well. But by getting to know yourself, getting to know your skill set, you can tell much more powerful stories when you're networking about your skill set and how you've had accomplishments. That opens up more opportunities. That opens up more horizons for you in career. It helps you then when you're interviewing, because you've got these great stories that you've written about your skill set, with you, frankly, as the hero or heroine of the tale, and you're able to focus on how you contributed to that organization. And it becomes a lot easier for that employer to see how you can help them make money. Or even if you're going to work for a volunteer organization, you can help them understand how you can help them raise money or help them save what little money they do have in that not-for-profit organization. Also, you're prepared to write a much better and a much more powerful resume. And in fact, when we go through this entire process that Anton taught me, when I go through it with individuals, we take a whole different look at how to write your resume. There's a combination style resume that focuses on your skills and it leads with your skills. It still has your chronological activities in it, but it leads with your skill sets. And it becomes easily customizable because you've listed all of your skills and you've taken that inventory of your skills. And it becomes a lot easier for you to match up with a position description that's of interest to you and tell your story in a far better way that will resonate for that prospective employer.
Absolutely. Knowing your capabilities through your accomplishments will really help you to identify the type of job or the next career that you might want to have. And it should be something that you're looking forward to, something fun.
You're right, and actually through this process, you've identified the things that maybe have motivated you in the past when you were most motivated, and you start to do those things that you can follow that passion and find a way to make a living out of it and be successful for that prospective employer, but more importantly, be successful for yourself and do something that you enjoy the rest of your life.
So what about when you're writing your resume? I know that, in the military, we tend to have these multi-page resumes with all of our learning and our schools and all the medals and that we've achieved. For a corporate resume, what would you recommend the maximum length be?
Rule of thumb is 2 pages and no more. Like I said, we get into in the rest of the training that I do with individuals the idea of a combination style resume where you lead with your skills. The second page becomes your chronological history, so the folks in HR are satisfied that they know your whereabouts for the past 15 or so years. But the front page leads with your skills. The typical resume in a job application gets about, people don't realize, gets about 7 to 10 seconds of review. So you've got 7 to 10 seconds to capture their attention, that you've got the right skill set that they're looking for. You at least want to make it into that pile that says, we better talk to this person or we might be making a mistake.
Right. All right, so first page, skills first, targeted at the job that you're applying for. And then history, job experience after that.
Right. In that set, of course, you've got your summary statement up front, which kind of sums up your whole value proposition, what you bring to the table, what they get if they get you. But the fact that it's immediately backed up by the skills on that front page and those successful PAR stories that show how you got results for the organization, it becomes a much more powerful statement about the skills that you have and the success that you've had over time using those skills.
So, opening with who you are as an individual and your particular goals, your transferable, targetable skills, and then perhaps a couple of specific examples of the accomplishments and objectives that you've achieved using those skills that prospective employer needs.
Sure, you want to have at least 4 or 5 PAR statements underneath each skill set. And we're getting into some of the specifics of a much more involved training on how to write the resume. But you want to have enough there that helps them see that over time you've used this skill consistently and you've gotten results. And if you've written good, strong PAR statements, they see the action that you took and the results that you've gotten for the organization in a documentable way that they can understand that you're that person with those skills that has always gotten results with them.
So, a lot of self-reflection as you prepare and work your way through the memory map and the PAR statements so that you can identify specific skills that an employer is looking for.
Absolutely. When you start writing the PAR statements, there's a job aid that I use that has some questions that can help the individual tell their story. And they don't have to use it every time, but the first couple of times through it, that job aid really helps them to think through what was going on, what was the problem or situation, what action did they take, and what the results were, so that they get their story down. And as they do that, you've got those great stories with the results, and that's what really resonates for an employer.
Outstanding. Like for myself, I know, and for you, I have 30 years of both enlisted and officer performance reports, which characterize and categorize the achievements of my career. And that's really the first place that I'm going to go to try to identify the skills that I used to achieve all of the successes that I've had.
Yeah, I had the same. I had 26 years, and some of that was prior enlisted. And there were things I did back as a junior officer that when I went back through the memory map and traced all the way back, I realized that I had a lot of, if you'd asked me when I started the process, did I have any retail sales experience, I would have said absolutely not. And yet I ran a package store for the Coast Guard as a collateral duty. We did about $1 million in sales in 1973 money. I ran a food service operation. I had people that did the work for me, but I signed all the documents and signed for the inventory and so forth. And I ran an all-hands club. And if anything went wrong in my all-hands club last night, you can be sure I was sitting in front of the old man the next morning explaining. So I was a responsible guy, even though it was a collateral duty. So going back through all of those accomplishments brings out some things that you've done over the years that may have direct relevance to the kind of work that you eventually want to do.
And what about this this 30-second elevator speech? What do you think of that?
Well, it's an important skill about how to introduce yourself, but now you've got the story in a much more powerful way. Instead of starting to identify yourself as a position description or simply giving a needy statement, I need help, you can tell a story about the skills that you have and how you've used them successfully. And you get out who you are, what you're trying to do, why you think that's the right area you want to go into, when and where, because sometimes we start the networking a couple of years in advance of when we're getting out, so you want people to know when you're going to be available for employment. Where might be the only thing you know. Sometimes the only thing we've got in our minds is we're going back to Keokuk, Iowa, where we grew up, and that's where we want to be. And a person you're talking to may not know anything about the field you're in, but they may know people in the place where you're going, and they can connect you to a good, helpful network in that area. And then you want to ask for help somewhere in that 30-second speech. Somewhere you want to say, what the specific help is that you need, and people like to be asked. And if you ask them, you're going to find out that human nature is everybody wants to help you. But if you tell a coherent story like that in that 30 seconds, help them understand what you're trying to do, it's going to get results. And people's human nature is to help you. You just got to help them to help you.
So as you transition out, you're not looking for a handout, you're not needy, you're not retired, you're a motivated, gung-ho individual looking to do good things for the next prospective employer, and you want to let them know why they need you, why they want you.
Exactly. And there are some great military-friendly employers out there, but like I said before, they only stay in business because they can make money, or make money for their shareholders, as the case may be. They want to help you, but you've got to tell them a story of how you can help their organization. They're going to be inclined to hire you over somebody else, but you've got to tell your story and help them see that you're valuable to their organization.
Absolutely. What about, is there any literature that you would suggest or recommend veterans and military people to read as they prepare to transition?
Well, like I've already pointed out, I think Richard Bowles' What Color's Your Parachute is one of the best guides to get started as far as coming to understand yourself, knowing your skill sets. There's a lot of great other tools in that book that you can use, and a lot of guidance that exists there. We don't have enough time in this interview to talk about all of the other. They're great resume writing books. I recommend anybody look up the combination style resume. I know MOA has a book that they put out with guidance about how to write a good combination style resume, and there are a few other great resume books out there.
And I'm glad that you mentioned MOA. So that's the Military Officers Association of America?
Yes.
Is that what it is? Okay. And so that's another great networking tool. And so, in corporate America, professionals, they belong to associations outside of, and that relate to what they do for work. Do you recommend that we do that as well as we transition out?
Absolutely. It's a good source for networking, but again, it starts with knowing yourself, knowing your skill sets, and as you start the networking process and you're able to tell your story better, you can, when you interview with people, you want to look for opportunities for informational interviews. An informational interview is an opportunity. You request to speak with someone for about 15 to 20 minutes to get smarter about the industry that you think you might be interested in. And hopefully you get referred to them, and you make it clear that you're not calling them up for a job, you're calling them up for some of their expertise. You want to understand a little bit more about the terminology used in the field, the professional associations that people in that field might belong to, websites that they might go to for information and wisdom in their field. It helps you to get smarter about their field. When you're doing those kinds of things, you're also trying to show your potential value, the knowledge and expertise that you have from your career that might be valuable to them. So you're trying to bring them into your network as well by showing some value that you present to them in the future based on the knowledge and experience and accomplishments that you have. But you've got to have done the work ahead of time in the memory map, right in the PAR statements. So when you're in front of those people and those opportunities present themselves, you can give a good representation of your skills and your background.
Absolutely. So the foundation for pursuing a second career with a new prospective employer is really that self-reflection, that review of your military career and all of the successes that you've had and the skills that it took to achieve them.
Absolutely. It's back to product knowledge. You've got to know the product and you are the product. And there's a challenge sometimes in thinking about this in terms of the accomplishments. We all think in terms of the team that we're members of. And as we transition out, we may never be have that same team relationship that we had while we were in the service. But you've got to understand that what role did I play in each of those accomplishments, and you've got to be able to tell your story. As I like to say, that when you're in career transition, if you don't blow your own horn, there's not going to be any music.
So what you just said is very interesting to me. So moving from the military, the team environment to either the public, private, or corporate sector, how do they operate? How is that different? Are they into the team involvement? Is it similar? Is it different? What could you expect as you come out of the military and move into the private sector?
Well, you've certainly got to be a team player. The team activities are different because you're in an environment where you're working with all peers. You don't have the rank and rate structure. And you've got to realize that there are those who perceive that we have a different leadership style, that we're we're not as collaborative in the way that we reach decisions during our military career. And I encountered that myself, where people just had that perception. So you've got to prove that you can be a good team player when you're not wearing your stripes on your uniform, that you can be a member of the team, that you can help the team, that you can contribute to the team, because there's going to be that perception that you maybe don't have that ability. So you've got to prove that as well.
Absolutely. All right, so that's a key component, is be self-aware of how you're going to interact in a different or a new environment versus the military environment, where, like for myself and probably for you, there have been times when it's been authoritative or dictative or do this or do that. And like you said, they don't have the rank structure necessarily in the private world.
There's no question that you've got to establish that ability to contribute to the team. You've got to spend some time getting your bearings in this new organization, but you've also got to be productive as soon as you can. So it's striking that balance. As well as the skills that you bring to an organization, the organization is looking to see how well you fit into their culture.
All right, well, Dan, this has been an awesome opportunity and experience. I thank you for your years of wisdom, your experience, and your ability to help veterans transitioning and military people out of the military into the public, private, and the corporate sector. I think that there's a lot to be gained by following your process. I look forward to doing it myself, and doing the memory map and the PAR statements, and developing a resume that will be effective for me with your help and guidance as in the future when I transition out of the military into my next career in the corporate sector. So thank you again.
You're welcome, Chris, and I look forward to working on that process with you.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.